Okay, so we'll start back up again here. So how it worked basically is the Tyson brothers owned this photographic studio in the town, and then in 1865, I think it was, Isaac Tyson purchased Charles Tyson's business out, and for a while it was just Isaac Tyson. And then Isaac Tyson moved back to Philadelphia, and Charles Tyson brought his brother out. And then for a while it was C.J. Tyson. But C.J. Tyson had married a Greist in Upper Adams County, and he was really interested in the burgeoning orchard business. And so he started with his brother-in-law an orchard up in Manalapan Township, between Big Orville and Bendersville. And so he didn't really spend much time at the studio. So William Tipton, who had been the apprentice, and another assistant, a guy named Robert Myers, they sort of ran the studio for C.J. Tyson. And it was while those two were running the studio that a series of stereographs of the battlefield were sold. Now, stereographic cards. So here is the stereographic viewer, and here's what we call a stereo card. And this is one of Devil's Den, and of course, it is a camera that actually has two lenses on it and records two photographs at the same time. And when you reproduce the positive from the negative, and you cut it in half, reverse it, and stick it onto a card and look at it in the viewer, it appears in 3D, much as if you were a kid when they had the Viewmaster, appears. But this is the early form of the Viewmaster. And so in 1867, C.J. Tyson, and we believe William Tipton and Robert Myers, they go around and probably during that summer, from early summer until late summer, record a series of views of the battlefield. They are numbered 501 through 580. And these stereo views would be continued to be reproduced after the studio changed hands. Eventually, Tipton and Myers bought out C.J. Tyson. For in a few years, it was called Tipton and Myers. And then Tipton got Tyson back into the business and bought out Myers, and then it became Tipton and Company. And finally, in 1883, William Tipton purchased Tyson's share of the business, and it became William H. Tipton and Company. And throughout the years, C.J. Tyson, Tipton and Myers, Tipton and Company, William H. Tipton continued to sell stereo cards made from this series that was created in 1867. So I guess I am one of the few people who has approached this systematically and tried to identify all the views, 501 to 580. And I'm going to talk about this in more detail. It's going to be a little more complicated than it sounds, because you think we're talking about 80 photographs and we're not. Okay? So I've actually put together a spreadsheet for Tyson 501 for 580. And I'm fortunate enough to have a few friends that collect stereo cards. And so I would just say between Eric Dorr sitting back here, John Richter of Hanover, and Sue Boardman, and of course William Frasinito, along with my own collecting, skills, which aren't that great, I have managed to catch at least a glimpse of 501 to 580. Now, Tysons were reproduced in great numbers over the years. So not only their original Tyson mount, they're on Tipton mounts later. But the Weavers, Peter Weaver and his cousin Hansen, working out of Hanover, recorded a series of views the same time period, and we have only seen like a third or maybe a half of the available views that we suspect may be out there from their production, because they were reproduced in a limited quantity. But these were sold to tourists, and you can find them around. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that series. What's really interesting for me about this series is they were recorded at the same time that the Warren map of the battlefield was being produced. The Warren map, the survey of the battlefield done by the Army Corps of Engineers, was done in 1868 and 1869 for the Army Engineer Department. And it shows the fences, the houses, the tree lines as they appeared in 1868, and then we have these views from 1867. Now I thought about just presenting 501 to 580 tonight and just going through every one and talking about them, but it would be very tedious. So I'm just going to hit some of the highlights of the series. Here's an engraving of C.J. Tyson, since they're under his name. Here is a view on the Salmon Mount, for lack of a better term to describe the color. I believe that the original mounts first issued were yellow, but the Salmon mounts that were the second version of the views printed in 1867 are the ones that were printed in greater quantities. But these are the ones, if you see this stereo view on that color mount, and you can look on the back, it'll tell you the name of the photographic studio. You can look for the originals. What's really, I've complained to my friends who collect things endlessly about this. You'd think that a view on the original Tyson mount would be worth more than a 1890s reprint by by Tipton on the Tipton mount, but such is not the case. There is no, way to establish the market. Sometimes you get a Tyson cheap, sometimes you have to buy a Tipton really expensive. But you guys probably know eBay now has allowed for collectors of items such as this to scour the entire country and at least provide a place where you can buy more of these. When I was young, you had to just go from flea market to flea market to flea market around town. Of course, I'm not complaining because I got a lot of things really cheap. So this is a view in the Valley of Death looking towards Little Round Top. And by 1867, Little Round Top is starting to get a little overgrown, isn't it? Here is one on a yellow mount, but you see it says Tyson's stereoscopic views. And here, battlefield of Gettysburg, natural granite breastwork near Devil's Den, occupied by rebel sharpshooters. And you can see, published by C.J. Tyson. So they have the mount on them that tells you who was selling them. And this is good because when Tipton and Myers take over the studio, they have their own mount, Tipton and Myers. But again, Tipton and Myers are still selling the views that were made from the negatives that were created in 1867. Here is one I noticed. This was on eBay, somebody had there. And this is the southern portion of Gettysburg. So this is a stereo taken from the same angle as the August 1863, series view. of looking from Seminary Ridge into the town. Of course, you can't see the town very well in this view, but you can sure see that mass of rocks that's between the Middle Street and the Millersville Road at that time. Isn't that kind of cool? And this one is taken literally from the front door of the Adams County Historical Society looking down the hill. In stereo, it jumps out at you. That house down there on the road would be about where Destination Gettysburg's parking lot is located, if you know where that is. Now, here is number 500. I have questions that I still have not answered about this series. Is 500 part of the series? Remember, we said 501 to 580. 500, as reproduced by William Tipton, is a view of James Geddes' house. It burned in a fire in 1880. So we know this image predates 1880. But I have never seen it on a Tyson, C.J. Tyson mount. I have not seen it on a Tipton and Myers mount. I have only ever seen it on a William H. Tipton mount. So the dilemma is for us, is this a photograph that was recorded in the 1870s and William Tipton just gave it the number 500 and added it to the front of the 501 to 580 series? Or